This episode of the podcast has been brought to you by Sweet Cheetah Publicity. Sweet Cheetah is an inclusive, socially conscious PR collective that puts their money where their mouth is. They have a current roster of bands that reads like a greatest hits anthology. Brainiac, Catholic School, Jawbox, The New Amsterdams, Oceans in the Sky. I mean, the list goes on and on. They also do PR for record labels such as A La Carte, Arctic Rodeo, Steadfast, Rad Girlfriend, and so many more. How do they pay it forward? How do they put their money where their mouth is? By generating thousands of dollars in annual charitable donations to the likes of Women in Vinyl, Coalition of Communities of Color, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and many, many more. The man has the receipts. I've seen them. It is real. The artists, labels, and podcasts Sweet Cheetah works with are curated with an eye on working primarily with friends. You could find Sweet Cheetah on all of the social media platforms, be it Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just look for Sweet Cheetah PR and they will be there. He's been Tim, I've been Peter, and Sweet Cheetah has been beautiful. Hello and welcome to the last edition of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast of the year 2022. I'm your host, Peter, and I am still here. Tonight on the show, I have an old friend, someone who I've been, listening to and enjoying since the 90s, someone who's a part of my cultural experience as a punk rocker in the United States. That would be Mr. Justin Pearson. Justin has been in more bands than I can probably rattle off in one spurt, but let's give it a go. All Leather, Dead Cross, Def Club, Ground Unicorn Horn, Head Wound City, Holy Molar, Leg Lifters, More Pain, Planet B, Retox, Satanic Planet, Some Girls, Struggle, Swing Kids, The Crimson Curse, and The Locust. Currently, Dead Cross just put out their second full length, and Def Club just put out a split 6-inch where they cover my favorite freaks, Killing Joke. Also, Justin is the subject of a new documentary that has yet to come out commercially called Don't Fall in Love with Yourself. This film covers his entire life, from being a very small child all the way through every band he was ever in practically. A good majority of it was based around the Locust because they were the longest lasting band of his career thus far. But this is worth checking out. It's well directed, it's well shot, great quality, well scripted, phenomenal documentary. This episode covers a great amount of my own personal history with Justin, as well as a shared history with my best friend, Jay Hudak, one of my best friends, Jay Hudak, who I'd grown up with, who is the bass player of the band An Albatross. Previous to that, he and I were in a band with Jake from An Albatross, former guitarist of An Albatross. We played a ton of times with the Locust. We had a nice little kinship together, the Distal Isis Compendium. And, I don't really get too deep into the history of that band, but when Jay Hudak comes on the show, which he will come on the show eventually, I'm hoping, hint, Jay, we'll get more into that band and that history. But for right now, I don't want to give too many teasers about the episode because it's a lengthy one and it's a strong one. So without further ado, I give to you Justin Pearson on the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. Hello, Justin.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. You know what? I need to grab a cable real quick. Give me 1 second.
Absolutely. Do you age, man? Jesus Christ. You look this
I think it's like I don't know what it is.
punk rock, apparently, because
You know what? To be honest, probably that is punk rock mixed with not doing like a lot of drugs and drinking. That's where you fuck yourself up. I think physically.
yeah.
Cool.
I'm overcome by this like memory of, you, Jason Hudock, myself. We were at we just all played the Wilkes-Barre Festival that we would play a lot.
Yeah.
And we were at my friend Kate Flannerly's house, and you're in bikini underwear, dive into her pool, hit the top of your head because you dive in head first.
Oh, fuck.
I go into the pool after you. We pull you out, and you throw up some blood, and you turn around and you're like, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm good. I just throw some blood. like, seeing you right now, that's the first memory it conjures. Maybe that's fucked up on my part because I have a lot of memories of you, but that's the first thing that comes to mind is, Justin just kind of like throwing up and being like shaking it off, like, I'm good, it's all right.
That is so crazy. I remember the festival very, very well. There's always this wild footage. I remember the audience was just like fucking nuts. It was so rad. But that show or that party afterwards, I do remember that. I don't remember going in the pool, but I remember busting my head open because I remember we stayed at this shitty motel that night, and I remember like having to wash my head because there was blood everywhere, and I also was spitting up blood in the shower, and I was like, fuck you guys, this is pretty bad. The funny thing is when we were loading out at the show, I guess there was this guy on the street that was trying to like hustle me for some CDs and shit, and he dropped out of his shirt pocket, he dropped this bag of cocaine, and I was like, oh, and I put my foot over it, and then I kind of covered it, and then he bailed. And interestingly enough, he came back later and was like, I dropped something, and we're just like, don't know. And my thoughts were, so I still haven't done cocaine yet, but my thoughts were like, I think we were playing like Philly, we're playing somewhere the next day with Airborne Radar, and I'm like, I'm gonna fucking sell that cocaine to
Stalag
some,
13.
or at least give it to Airborne Radar. And I remember going in the shower that night at the hotel, bleeding everywhere, and I came out, and everybody in the fucking hotel ended up doing the cocaine that I had found. And I was like, I was gonna sell it, man. Like that was mine, and I was gonna make some fucking money. Cause back then on tour, it was like we were all broke as fuck. And I was like, cool, this is probably like, well, I don't even know how much cocaine goes for, but I was like, it's more money than I have. So yeah, great story.
You were playing the Stalag the next night, and we all went. If I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah.
We all showed up, we all followed. Gabe and I got into a wrestling match in front of the Stalag 13 the next day, as a matter of fact. But there was like I vividly remember you going in head first, and I'm like, oh, he's fucked. And I go in after you, clothes and all, and Hudock goes in after me like, you stupid son of a like, it was a whole mess.
Yeah.
And you shook it off, and we were convinced you were okay. Apparently not so okay.
I mean, worse things have happened to me, so there's that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's been very interesting watching your trajectory since then, because we're talking about a long time ago at this point. We're both we're both in our 40s, well into our 40s.
Yeah, I'm on the later side of it, but yeah,
as am I. Yeah. So it's been interesting kind of watching you kind of dip in and out of really amazing musical projects and writing an incredible book, and really like putting fine points on what most people would consider to be lesser achievements. But in all honesty, it's incredible because you got to live this amazing lifetime within the span of in all honesty, a very short amount of time. You've put together one hell of a resume. How does that feel on your side of it? Because you've done everything from be like when we were kids on Jerry Springer with Scott Byven to fucking like, you know, writing a book, doing all of these amazing musical projects to being in a fucking band with Mike Patton, which you're going on tour in a couple days, right?
No. That tour is with Def Club. Dead Cross is not on tour. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, it's it's an interesting. I appreciate all the stuff that you've said, and it's very nice. I'm very flattered. I think that there's like these like skill set that comes with like being punk or being into punk or something, because, you know, for you and I, we are able to kind of have these experiences like the one that we just talked about, which is almost like not many people, you know, I mean, maybe you can tell us, maybe a lot of people can tell stories like that. Like a shithead could probably tell a story like, I had cocaine and I busted my head and blah, blah, you know, whatever. But yeah. I think there's like a way to, there's something like more to it where like, it's not for everybody, you know, especially just going to that festival. That was fucking crazy. And we saw crazy shit, and we saw musicians and artists that are, you know, some are legendary or even just, you know, super weird niche underground, like, you know, hugely influential to so many different people. And we were part of a network, especially like going to that festival. I mean, it was a full on fucking network of stuff for us all to survive, you know? And I think it was really important. Anyhow, we were able to see all this stuff, and we get all these skills from that normal people don't. And I think that's like, I don't know. I mean, that sets us up for cool shit. Like even the Jerry Springer thing, you know, I mean, not that I want to talk about it any more than it's already been talked about, but like,
right.
You know, most normal people wouldn't have fucked with that. And also it wouldn't have got like the sort of, you know, push that it got, because like, you know, when it aired, we, you know, I think the Crimson Curse had played the Michigan Northern Music Festival or something. And so it was just like this weird, like sort of way to promote and air quotes, like this TV show or like this prank. And like, that shit's cool. And like doing something stupid like that essentially got me into like acting and I was in Ozzy Argento's film in Capressa. You know, it's like these kind of, and like these weird increments of stuff that like lead to something else. And I mean, you know, even like how you mentioned playing with Mike Patton and stuff, I mean, it seems insane on, you know, like when you look at it, but if you like pick it apart, it's like, well, I mean, you know, we were lucky to be friends with Kid 606, who was like, you got to check out The Locust. And it was like, then Mike Pat, we were on his label. He released a Locust record. You know, The Locust toured with Phantomos, Retox toured with Tomahawk, you know, and we were just, it's not that weird if you look at it like that. I mean, they're all fucking awesome things in their own way. But like, yeah, I think that a lot of people kind of just like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be this kind of person. And they don't like, they're not as like open to whatever presents itself.
But what I think is really prescient here and really special is the fact that there was no, you didn't bend to any sort of you just did you the whole time, and it served you so well. Retox didn't, you know, kind of like kowtow to any sort of sound. You did what was true to you, which was very phenomenal in my opinion. But like, there was never a point in your career where it was like, okay, here's my pop record.
Well, you know? I mean, sure, I guess okay, maybe not pop, but I fucked around with electronic music, and I made an ass out of myself through my interactions with certain, you know, with parts of DJ culture, I guess. And like, I don't know, like for me, I looked at it like, well, I ended up like writing a book about that, how to lose friends and irritate people, like as not to say like fuck you to these people, but to kind of say like fuck you to myself for being like stupid and doing this shit that was like really not for me. But I made the best out of it, and I made something out of my, I don't want to say mistakes, you know, because I was just fucking around, and like the opportunity was there, and I figured like, sure, why not try, you know, like. I think still to this day, like touring with the Bloody Beetroots, I might have played to the biggest crowds I've ever played to, and I couldn't have given a flying fuck about the music, you know, and or my part in it. I was like dicking around, you know, and like one point I just fucking would throw the microphone out of the crowd and leave, you know, like that shit is like not normal stuff, you know, and I mean, I think I might have bummed out those dudes or whatever, but you know, at the end of the day, I think I don't know what the end of the day is. It just was a fucking weird thing that I thought, oh, I'll just do this, and I did it. And most people, I don't think would have taken that chance, you know.
I think to people from where we're from, we looked at that as like there's Justin having fun. You know, we didn't really see it as like a sellout or whatever, like, because you were always the type of person to kind of push things like, okay, I'm going to do this and fuck you if you don't like it. And that was the appeal of what you did for us, because you just didn't give that much of a fuck about like appearances. It was just you were going for your thing and we were along for the ride. That's why it worked for us, I guess. So
yeah, also I appreciate that, but I also think that like the us part is cool because, you know, it's not like I think that, you know, people always talk about like DIY culture, and I think it's more like, instead of do it yourself, I think it's like do it ourselves, because I do really feel like all of us were making crazy weird shit, you know. And again, like I think I mentioned Airborne Radar before, like, you know, it was that band that fucking changed shit for me, and that was like redefining, you know, hardcore, or like brutal weird hardcore. Like it was like, this is crazy shit. And I think that most people, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's like you ask someone. Like, I always reference this quote that Gabe said, and Gabe Serbian said in this interview. They said like, "What hardcore bands do you listen to?" And he said, "I don't listen to hardcore. I just play it." And I thought that's fucking brilliant, because you know, even today, like before we got on this call, I was talking to Luke Henshaw about this Planet B record we're working on, and he was referencing Fragile by that band, Yes, the album Fragile. And I was like, dude, that is one of my favorite all-time records, where I think most people would be like, oh dude, you play in Dead Cross, you like fucking, yeah, like not Yes like Owner of a Lonely Heart, Yes like the good shit, Yes, you know. And I think
prog, Yes, yeah,
but even the vocal harmonies, that's what we were talking about, like the crazy fucking vocal harmonies. And I'm not even like saying I'm able to do that, but like referencing that and taking from that and making something unique is really cool, where a lot of people kind of pick a lane and they stick to it and they're afraid to kind of do something else. I mean, like talking about Jay, I mean, I think an Albatross is a pretty good example. Like they were fucking weird, and I think their influences are probably pretty much all over the place. And that is a great thing that a lot of people aren't really don't really welcome for themselves, in any kind of way of, you know, genre or way of life or whatever the fuck you want to call it, you know, like and I see that a lot too, like even in like fans of music, because I'll say, and I use the word fans loosely, but like, you know, playing in Dead Cross, I see this serious shit that like Mike Patton and Dave Lombardo have to put up with, because like they, especially like the fucking Slayer fans, man, they only want their metal like one way and you can't fuck around. And I watch like people shit on Dave, and it's just crazy, because it's, for me, like my experience is, okay, and I'm gonna go off on a tangent and I apologize, but like I think it's very interesting, because when you take, Slayer's a good example. When you take Slayer and people criticize Dave for whatever it is that he is doing that's not suitable to the fans' expectations, I look at Slayer very simply. I was a little kid, you know, I was in my teenage, I was whatever, 13, and I was looking at a poster of them, and I fucking fixated on Jeff Hanneman's guitar with all of the stickers on
Dead Kennedy stickers, and
like Dead Kennedys and PIL, and you know, and I was like, oh, that's all the shit that I'm into. I see the correlation, I see the connection between,
it's metal for us.
Yes, but I see the fact that, like, you know, you would expect, well, I guess their influences were pretty much on par with what I was into, and I would see that, and I definitely know that with Dave now, you know, being in a band with them, and like talking to him about stuff, and like jamming and like talking about our influences. So it's crazy, because you have a lot of people that are only wanting this like one certain kind of thing, and you're not able to branch out. So I think that the us thing that you were talking about, like, I'm grateful that our community is for the most part pretty open to things. And I will say for the most part, but there's times where I've been pretty like pessimistic about it, but I'll always come around to optimism. I recently just had it where like an optimistic thing where I went and saw Converge at this festival that Def Club was playing, and it would, I mean, they're such a good band regardless, but like it was so cool to watch them rip and to watch their fan base evolve, or not evolve like change, but evolve as in like evolutionarily they were like on the shit. Like there wasn't like hardcore dudes anymore. It was all these weirdos and freaks and like trans kids and like the punks were there, and that was fucking cool. And I'm glad that stuff's happening, and it does give me a little bit of hope for the pessimism that I sense, you know.
Especially don't you, I glean a lot of hope from, you know, my daughter's 21 years old. That generation, I glean so much hope from, because they don't care about this, the codified, like, I have to be this, I have to fit in this box, genre, style. It's gone. To me, with that generation, they are what we were trying to be. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. I mean, as much as I fucking hate this internet most of the time and social media, at the time for us, I feel like we were trying to just defy and redefine everything, you know. So we were constantly trying to grab, like, even the way that we all looked, like looking like fucking Spock and shit, you know, and playing like the most, or trying to play like the most brutalist music, you know. I think that's important, and I think it's cool because we were for one, I think we were like fucking with gender and like gender stereotypes, because we were having people that were like not macho play essentially what macho people would be playing, you know. And I think that was fucking cool. Yeah, I don't know. The next generation, it's always about the future, you know, and what we get. I mean, I look at it, for me, it was like growing up and like obsessing over the Cramps and being like, how the fuck can this band exist in this shitty, you know, again, like macho fucking jock, you know, world that I live in, you know. Like at the time I discovered the Cramps, I was like just moved to San Diego, and it was like full on neo-Nazi shit happening. This was like right around the time when like the Geraldo thing happened with the neo-Nazi. It was just like, and then I was like, oh, there's a band where the dude, you know, puts his microphone down his pants, and there's like and the guitar player is like the most killer fucking guitar player, and she's a woman. Like, this is fucking rad. And it really was like the polar opposite to this bullshit that I saw, I think, politically and socially, and especially in punk, and especially in San Diego, because we did have a huge neo-Nazi problem. So I think it was like a subconscious reaction to all of this crap that we hated. And I'm glad that it like trickled down, and now there's like younger people that are psyched on it. It's fucking cool. It just took too long.
It did take too long, because in my opinion, the swing kids were already extolling that virtue. There was something about that wasn't, and as much as I loved hardcore at that time period, there was too much macho bullshit. Tough guy, like, I'll beat you down if this, that, and the other thing doesn't happen, and I ascribe to this, and if you don't, I'll beat the shit. There was none of that. The swing kids, there was a lot of art. There was a lot of, you know, you were extolling the virtues of jubilation through primal scream therapy. You know, it was completely fucking spike the mic on the floor, Fugazi at 20, going fucking nuts. And there was a virtue to that.
That's crazy. I appreciate that. And I do think Fugazi was a fucking huge.
Fuck yeah.
I mean, I remember seeing Fugazi when I was 13, and I remember a couple really important things. One of them was them telling like the audience not to mosh, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And the other one was when someone kept saying like Minor Threat stuff, and Ian was like, shut the fuck up, like go home and listen to Minor Threat on your record player. And I was like, whoa, you could be a fucking dick to your fans. That's so cool. Like I want to do that, you know, and not like I want to be a dick just to be a dick, but like I want to be a dick to challenge people that I feel should be challenged. But also, I think talking about swing kids, I would attribute it to Unbroken, because that was the shit. I mean, that was they came out, you know, around the same time. And obviously, we shared Eric Allen in both bands, but it was for me going and seeing like this sort of, you know, they sounded like, you know, whatever, you know, they sounded like Slayer or fucking Deicide or something, and you know, looked like Morrissey, and
Yeah.
they were the coolest band. They were so fucking cool. I mean, musically they were great, but aside from that, they were just cool, and that was really a big deal because we grew up with punk, and for me it was like I was always looking at like the Sex Pistols and how they looked cool, but that was like your uniform, and you kind of got that. Or even like moving on to like crust and stuff that I got into, but then it was like seeing this thing where like Unbroken came out, and it was like, oh shit, this is something totally bizarre and unique. And they fucked up they were so much more brutal than every brutal band.
Yep.
So that was a big deal, and not that Swing Kids were brutal. I wish we were at times. But it's just, I think we were like, again, like we were grabbing influences from all over the place.
Swing Kids were about going the fuck off. That's the important part about the Swing Kids. Like, and that translated to records. You can just tell people were spiking mics off the ground, and like it wasn't just about like moshing. It was about throwing yourself on the ground, laying yourself bare, and allowing yourself to have a fucking experience. And experiential music was what I think our generation really brought to the table for hardcore. It wasn't just form. It was about being a part of something bigger than yourself and allowing yourself to be a part of the experience.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, but
it is weird, like especially getting into like the later part of our 40s. I guess you can look at it in retrospect, because at the time I don't think any of us had any idea what the fuck was going on,
No, we didn't.
But to me it was like, I would look back like even in my late 20s, I'd look back and kind of see the sort of jumping off point was bands like, I don't know, the Germs or the Dead Boys, or again the Cramps, or something, like things that kind of had all of the substance and all the right elements, and it like really spoke to me, and going from there to the next thing. So maybe not that we're the next, not that the bands that we've been like associated with are the next Dead Boys or something, or the Germs, but fucking who knows? I don't know what it is, but it is strange to get older and to have lineage and see things differently.
Well, especially when you consider, like, maybe not everybody knows the Swing Kids like I do, but a lot of people involved in our scene know exactly who the fuck the Locust are. And the Locust, that was the next movement in what my opinion was a new renaissance of what our scene was about, because you weren't, again, paying attention to what was massive in our purview. It was more about like, I'm gonna do what you don't want me to do. There's gonna be
that's true, but I also don't even know if we were aware of that. I feel like we did what we wanted. We did what we wanted to do, only what we wanted to do, not like what is popular and what's gonna, we didn't care about like stats or sales or whatever. None of that mattered. We did what we thought was cool just for ourselves, and I think that's important.
Well, that's what made you stand out, because I'd shared enough stages with the Locust to tell anyone who's listening that there was no pretense, there was no putting on airs of like, I'm going to strike this pose and this is going to happen. That happened more in the tougher circles of hardcore, with rehearsed maneuvers on stage and throwing you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
With the Locust, with the Crimson Curse, with Festival of Dead Deer, there was just a lot of fucking like pure unadulterated psychosis going on in front of you, with a lot of intelligence behind it. That's what made it so much fun, and that's what inspired a lot of us.
But maybe not even like fun. I think it made it like, you look at bands, I don't know, like Antiaquero or Los Crudos, bands that came about that were so important, but we didn't really know we didn't really know that they were important. They were just our friends, and there were people that we liked, and we respected and appreciated, and now we realize the importance of that stuff. And I think that's really cool.
I think we all knew Martine was important. I really do. I think we all knew Martine was important. Crudos, that was, they reverberated through a lot of scenes, like, and it's not that much of a stretch that Zach De La Rocca was wearing a Crudos t-shirt in Rage Against the Machine video, because like he's from us, he's from Inside Out, but Crudos reverberated out of just like that microcosm of what we were doing, because they had a message. And I think that's why the Locust did. I think that's why Man is the Bastard did to a certain degree, because I know like death metal kids who knew who they were.
Yeah.
And they definitely weren't death metal. They were, power
they were more
violence.
like they were more like Yes than anything else.
Yeah.
That's another thing too, is I really feel like Man is a Bastard was such an important band, and Eric Wood specifically doesn't get like the credit that maybe he should, which he should get. That was hugely influential. And even if it wasn't influential, like bands were starting to be like Man is a Bastard, they were just I remember when Struggle would play with them, we would always just trip out on like just how righteous that shit was. And it was weird. Like no one tried to sound like them or copy them. People are just like, oh, there's those fucking weirdos and that shit's great, And I mean, even Swing Kids did a bunch of shows with them, and it totally made sense to us and Man is a Bastard, but not to like anybody else. Most people are like, what the fuck? We only like one of these kind of things. And we're like, no, we're like the same, even though we don't sound the same.
Well, we didn't have to. That was the beauty of like labels like Ebolition and what you did with your label. There was so much room to just fuck around and have fun. Like we wouldn't have I Am Spoonbender. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Yeah. There was so much fun to be had. And
where do you think the start of it is? Because I always try to figure that out, and I think the start of it might have been Fugazi.
Fugazi is my opinion. Fugazi, and then like, a little bit maybe Embrace Rites of Spring stuff.
But Fugazi, because and this is just my take on it. Like everyone was like Minor Threat. Oh, it's the guy from Minor Threat. Because I didn't know who Guy was until like, I figured out who Fugazi was.
Right.
But I was like, oh shit, this is weird. It's not like punk hardcore. It's got more musicianship to it, and that was a really interesting thing. But even if we were going to credit Fugazi, I think going back to like punk rock, if you look at Dead Kennedys, because even musically they were way beyond Minor Threat. They were like doing wild shit musically, and I think that's fucking pretty rad.
You had Dick Dale in the mix with the Dead Kennedys. You had a lot of protest music mixed in, because let's not forget, there were some hippies in that band, and they were unabashed at that point, as they should have been, because if it weren't for the hippies, our generation wouldn't have been anything. We're the children of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yes, the Kennedys, very much so. They were very angular. They were very cerebral, yet there was surf rock. There was so much happening. But Fugazi, Revolution Summer,
yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty weird to see these sort of major, turning points or like focus points, I guess.
I think Joy Division though too, because for you, like if I think of the Locust, I think of Fugazi, and I think of Joy Division, because
that's so crazy. I mean, I really 100% appreciate that, both of those bands. But I think when we were writing the Locust stuff, especially early on, that was never on our radar, or never on our conscious radar. I think it was on our subconscious radar, but at the time, we were trying to be like Devo and Deicide or something, but fucking
both awesome as well, in my opinion. But
sure, yeah. Devo is probably going. That's another step too that we should probably acknowledge, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really get too far into our music, our musical universe without acknowledging Devo. Are we not, man? Like that's a very important step.
Yeah.
But also Chuck Schuldiner and Death is a very important step for us. There's so much to be acknowledged about the greater sphere of music, but Steely Dan I have to acknowledge too for my own musical journey, because like I'm the son of a jazz musician. That's how I got into weird shit to begin with. That's how I found Sun Ra from my dad.
Wow. Lucky
so,
I didn't get shit from my dad.
I got music and an addictive personality, so
yeah.
But you know what I mean? There's you have to have that weird that weirdo genetic in order to have an ear for it and to
Yeah.
be an appreciator and a creator. So you got that weirdo thing. Like somebody imbued that into you before you discovered it. Someone had to be that progenitor of the oddball, as it were.
You know what
You,
it was? For me, it was thrasher skate rock music. Those thrasher skate rock compilations. 'Cause I was fully into skateboarding.
yeah,
But a little bit before the thrasher stuff, I remember when Ferris Bueller's Day Off came out, I was obsessed over the band Yellow that's on the soundtrack.
yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
and 66 Sputnik. It was Yellow and 66 Sputnik that kind of got me on the trajectory to weird synth music that was a little more like bizarre.
Mm.
And then it was the skate rock comps, and then for me it was like meeting people in bands and like, you know, like meeting people in the Cramps and Slayer and stuff like that. That was like, oh shit, I got it. Not that I thought I could be like them, but they treated me like a normal person, and I wasn't just like here's my autograph, get the fuck out of here kind of thing, you know,
Yeah.
which is whatever. Like I kind of saw things a little bit differently, and you know, I set my goals very low and my standards very low as far as like my personal accomplishments, and I always would, because they were so low, I would always exceed them. and that made me keep going, I guess, you know. I mean, fuck, I put out, I recorded and toured at the age of 15.
Yeah.
That's not many 15-year-olds get to do that. Like, it was crazy because I would like look at people, other 15-year-olds, you know, and like see what their priorities were or their concerns or the things that they were worried about. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go on tour. I don't care about all this other shit that you're dealing with or you care about, you know? And so that was a pretty weird thing to kind of look at, especially at that age, and to realize that, you know, and then it just snowballed from there. And I got the, you know, the bug or whatever you want to call it. And there was no way to stop me, I guess.
Well, yeah, but I mean, and it's easy to see in Struggle because that was for a bunch of young men very well formed. It was incredibly realized for young people. And we grew up listening to bands that were comprised of young people, and we had good examples of it. So that may have been a strength, but it seems to me that you guys were pretty literate musicians by the time you'd found one another.
Oh, I fucking had no idea what I was doing. I still don't really know what I'm doing, but in Struggle, I did not know. And in looking back at it, like I can kind of, I mean, I think I can always be critical on my own part. Like I feel like in Struggle, I was probably the weak link. I mean, I think Cliff wrote most of the great, you know, the better riffs. Dylan was a great lyricist. Jose was obviously a great drummer. But looking back on it, like my critical side was like, I wish I played with the pick because I played with my fingers, and I wish I had distortion, you know, shit like that. I also wish that, I think Jose is an incredible drummer, but I also think that for like a metal, kind of like hardcore metal band, he was too jazzy. I think he was perfect in Swing Kids. He can fucking go off and go crazy, but in Struggle, he needed to be like more like, you know, I don't know, whatever, 4 on the floor, or just like kind of more straightforward. But either way, it's like, oh, I'm going to dive into playing in my first band with a fucking jazz drummer. Like that actually helped the DNA of like how I write music and stuff. It was very strange. I was ready for uncertainty, which I think a lot of people maybe were always like looking, like if you think about your first punk band, it's always like whoever, you know, it's like, it just seems like very basic. You like write these basic songs, and like for me, I was like always like waiting, going like, oh, he's gonna fucking just stop or change or run off or break some shit, and we're expected to figure out how to adapt to this this weird situation. And it happened a lot, you know, and especially in Swing Kids. But I was the singer in Swing Kids, so I could dick around. It didn't matter that much, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good example too, because like working with Jose, and then also like working with Gabe Serbian, because Gabe was completely 100% reliable, except for like maybe he would play too fast. But like as far as like his technical ability and his the structure was always, it was like he was so well orchestrated in what he did. And so between those two drummers, they really set me up to be able to fucking play with Dave Lombardo, I guess.
Especially like because Gabe was like the ultimate fucking weirdo in the best way possible. He he just had a way of looking at the world that was completely off the wall and fun, and it was a pleasure to be around him.
Well, the fucked up thing about Gabe is when that story that you brought up, he was playing guitar. I mean, it's
yes.
Oh yeah, you can do like all these things, like that guy got like, he's like Mario Rubalcaba or something. You're just like, what the fuck, man? You're talented at more than one shit, more than one thing. That's like not fair for everybody else. We're like, we only get one thing, if that. And there's these other people that get like 2 and 3 and 4. You're just like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I kind of want to hate you, but I love you. So
yeah.
that's that thing. And that calls to mind like being a multi-talented human being, like and having known of you and had met you so many times. I'm watching what was that movie now, The Icarus Line Must Die. I'm sitting home one night and I'm like, oh, I know Dom DeVore was in The Icarus Line for a minute. I'll watch this movie. And then there's you. And I'm like, that's Justin. That's fucking Justin. What the fuck's he doing in this? You're acting, and then
when Joe asked, like, will you, would Retox be in it? We were like, yeah. I mean, me and Joe go back like really far. I mean, even to when he was in the Kinkersaws. So like,
yeah,
it was like, it was cool. It was like, it was a little nugget, like here's this piece of thing. And I was impressed that there was this weird film about him and about his band. And it just, he's part of the community and part of the family. And it's like, and I appreciated the fact that he wanted us to be in it. And it was kind of funny too, because there was nothing to it. Like, I mean, I remember I had this weird brace on my arm and I really had it, and so in part of the movie, he's like, oh, what happened to your arm? I was just bullshitting, like, oh, life or, whatever. And like, it made like the movie, and it was just such a weird, it made it in the movie. And it was like so strange. That we just did whatever. It was cool. I like those things. And I think that those kind of things exist. Damn, what was I just talking about? Like seeing, how do I put this? Anyhow, I just wrote this story and I posted it on social media about Danny Elfman, about how my first time I discovered Danny Elfman was in the movie with Rodney Dangerfield. Why am I drawing a blank? Back to School. And so it was like I sat down to watch a movie with Rodney Dangerfield, and then there's this killer band in it who are pretty fucking weird, and I was like, oh, so it was like the secret like nugget, and that I think is really important, the little nuggets that you get to find.
And then you get to play with Danny Elfman.
I didn't get to play with him. I just rehearsed, but
we'll rehearse with him, yeah.
I mean, I'll take that, but it's someday maybe. But it was like pretty rad, to collaborate with that guy to any level. And maybe he's a good point to throw in there with like, the Fugazis and the
Boingo.
Yeah. I mean, they were pretty damn bizarre. Even in that movie, I rewatched it. Was it the synth player or the drummer? He had this like crazy fucking Widow's Peak thing. Like, I mean, they just looked cool, like they looked like a weirdo band, not like a rock band, or not. They weren't necessarily like new wave, they were just fucking weird. And that was what, like, I was really drawn towards that.
Yeah. That they were even weirder than Roxy music at that time. So it was like very eye-catching. Like, ooh, Jesus, look at these guys. Like, I want to know more about that.
Yeah. Like they kind of look sketchy, and you're like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like I'm into that,
That's that watching Gleaming the Cube and seeing Christian Slater wear a Cramps t-shirt, and you wanted to know about that band because of that t-shirt. It was the same kind of thing, but you got to hear it, you got to sample it. Yeah,
that's a good point, because for me it was like watching all those skate competitions, like seeing that stuff in in Phoenix and in Southern California in the 80s, like going and watching, I don't know who, maybe like Lance Mountain or something. Like I remember he had a Sam Hain sticker on his helmet, and I was like, what is, like, that looks so cool. What is that, Sam Hain? And then instantly I saw it in Thrasher, and I was like, okay, I got to figure out what this was, and it all made sense at that point. So those are, again, like the weird little, pieces of information that are sprinkled for people to discover.
So, but you make it through all of this stuff and you accomplish all these things musically. What spurns on, the book? What is the final straw that kind of breaks the camel's back that makes you think, okay, I need to document this? Because you come from zines just like me. What makes you want to just compile this and spit it out?
I naively wrote a book. I think, fuck, that's a really strange question. So I was just writing this like a tour diary thing for something. I can't remember what it was, and the Locust had just done. We had just had some songs in Cecil B. Demented, and I became friends with John Waters, and we were talking, and I sent him this. He read part of the tour diary or something and was like, you should write a book. And I was like, what? And he's like, no, you should write a book. Give it a try. And I was like, and so I wrote this story. It's in the book From the Graveyard of the Rousal Industry. And it's about like me wanting to go see Kiss and not getting to see him. And so I wrote this like little piece, and he goes, there's the start of your book. And I was like, what the fuck, man? And so then I just started piecing it together, and I wrote a whole bunch of little stories, and then I put them in chronological order. And to me, the way my brain works, I looked at it like a record. Like each one was like a song, and they didn't have to flow from one to the next. But I mean, they were in order, but they didn't like, it wasn't like the story or like the same characters. It changed, whatever per different chapter. But that was like the way. And so I wrote it, and I got like some support, and I really appreciated that. But I think I should have got some criticism. But regardless, I got support, and I got hooked up with Soft Skull, and they initially I was trying to get AK Press to put it out, and they did this thing where they voted. Yeah, that was like, because I had some friends that worked there, and so I was like, oh shit. And they voted, and it has to be unanimous. And they said that it was not political enough. And I was like, okay, I get it. And that's cool. But I like Soft Skull too. I had read some books that were published by Soft Skull, like No More, what was it? Bomb the Suburbs and No More Prison by William Uplansky, I think his name is. I could be fucking this up, but those books were really, really, really important to me and informative. And so I was like, oh, that publishing company is great. And it was kind of like when you were a little kid and you discovered Alternative Tentacles because of Dead Kidneys, and then you found out about No Means No, and you found out about Alice Donut, and so on and so forth.
And No Means No is so fucking important. I want everyone to realize that Wrong is one of the best albums of all time.
Dude, that album made me want to be a bass player.
Yes.
That was it. And it changed the way that I looked at bass playing, because it sat on its own, it was like on its own, sort of like, I don't know, chair on the side. It wasn't like the guitar is the main thing, or the bass. It was just kind of like, here's the bass, and everyone was like, cool. Anyhow, so I wrote the book, and then I published it, and then in retrospect, I thought, oh man, I fucked up all these things, and I kind of like could have made it a little bit better. And then I wrote How to Lose Friends and Irritate People, which I think was funnier and better written. Like my tactics were better, and so now I have a better vision of it. So maybe it's like looking back at like Struggle or Swing Kids, I'm like kind of cringing at my contribution, and I have to like move on to like better stuff. So I am working on another book, but it's I just don't have time to do it really. But I wish I did. But it'll be good when the next one comes out. It'll be probably, it'll be the best one, because I'm smarter, I guess.
Well, I can tell you, having attained a BA in English Lit, there's legitimately nothing wrong with the prose or the narrative. I think what you're basing your opinion on about your own writing is your own neuroses about your own writing, because to me it flowed, it made sense, it was a very tactile experience, both go-rounds, but you only get better at writing by writing.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I appreciate that. But I mean, for me, it was like, I think I could have been funnier, or I could have been more creative, or I should have omitted certain things. you know, like I was like, that didn't need to be in there. That's fucking stupid that I wrote about that. But I learned what's stupid, I guess. You know, I mean, it's kind of like writing like mosh metal music, and now I'm like, that's stupid. I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So,
But to me it felt like fun, both go arounds, and that's the most important part. If you're enjoying the process, other people are going to enjoy the finished product. That's just the way that goes. You don't have to be, you know, a virtuoso at every turn. You just have to have a blast, and that's infectious. And that's what made what we all took part in so important.
Yeah, full circle. Yeah, because you know, why do we do this? We do it for ourselves, not for some sort of reward. Because I think that's where you start fucking up when you look at like mainstream, is because these people typically do something for like there's a payment to the thing. And for us, it was us. I mean, like you and every us, like, you know, like the larger picture. It was like almost like a survival. You know, like we have to do this right now. It doesn't matter what the future is. There might not be one. Like, we have to do this right now for survival. This is what we need to put out into the world, and for ourselves. It was never for something else. And I think that maybe if capitalism could fucking like recognize that, like,
or just fucking die, please die.
Well, yeah, but if like, I think there is such thing as like, I think there is ethical capitalism. I just wish like the concept of capitalism could use that sort of metaphor or idea instead of like its current
a little more Bernie, a little less Biden, please.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I'll go on, if you don't mind. Can I go on another tangent?
Please.
Okay. My friend Mike Crane, who's in dead across from me, the other day, this is a few months ago, he called me and he's like, "Hey, I need you. This guy's gonna call you. You need to get on this phone with this guy. Like he's like a talent scout or whatever for this TV show. It's like this. It's like for this. It's like for like, what are those shows called where you like naked and scared and fucking shit like that? Like where you have to go and like do the things. Like it's for this show. Like they need someone. I think you'll be perfect for it." And I'm like, "All right, like sure." You know, I'm like, "Tell him to call me." And so the guy calls me and he kind of starts laying it out. And he's like, it's like you go on this raft out like off of Costa Rica, and you have to like survive on this raft. And the person that they needed, the person they had for whatever reason canceled, so they needed someone like last minute. He's like, and so I went through all these interviews, and they needed someone that was liberal or politically liberal and an alpha. And I was like, okay, like, I'm very, very liberal, and I'm not sure that I'm a Leo, but that might not, I don't think I'm like an alpha, but I was like, I got it. I got this. Like, I got this. Let's just fucking go. I'll go on the show. And, you know, it's like, you win $1 million if you survive. And I was like, I'll fucking survive, dude. Like, if you put me on that shit, I will throw every Trump motherfucker off of that raft, you know, because that it's just going to happen. Maybe I'm not like buff and I'm not the alpha, but like, I will fucking survive because of like our roots and like the ethics we have and the fucking drive that we have to survive. Anyhow, I didn't get it because, okay, so yeah, back to the point was, he was like, so you're liberal and blah 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 blah, and I'm like, yeah, you're left leaning, and I was like, dude, I'm very left leaning, and he's like, well, what do you like, left leaning like Bernie Sanders? And I was like, okay, let me just say this, like, I think Bernie Sanders is probably the most like, he's the raddest politician that we have been given as Americans, in our lifetime, and I see why he didn't succeed, because there's too many assholes, even on the left, that are frightened of being like more radical. And I said, I'm very much more left than Bernie, or maybe I'm the same as Bernie, but Bernie just kind of had to hide some of it, you know. But I was like, and I think that's where I fucked up. I think they wanted me to be like, I'm totally Bernie, like Democrats, and I was like, no, fuck the Democrats, fuck them all, you know. Like, you know, here I am, like a little bit too like radical, and I think that might have been why I didn't get on the show. But fuck, I was like on the phone like you guys, I'm gonna have to cancel this tour. Like I'm gonna, and everyone was like, dude, if you're gonna go on this TV show, and like that's fine, we'll cancel tour. You know, it's like it was, but then I didn't get the job, so it would have been like Jerry Springer 2.0 or whatever, you know.
That would have trumped it, in my opinion, no pun intended, because that encapsulated a moment, the whole Springer thing. But this would have been like, it's the sequel, so you have to take it to that next level. Plus, you espousing the virtues of anarchism to a bunch of Trumpers, and you're knocking them off a fucking raft, and like it would that like there's actually no pose in that. With the Springer thing, that was a bunch of fun, and everybody who knew was in on the joke. But this would have been the real shit.
But maybe it's like the writing your first book and then your second book. So it might have been like, oh, I've done this once, I know how to do it better. Because I look back at the Jerry Springer thing and I'm like, I could have done so much cooler shit. And I know how to perform, like, and I use that like with air quotes too. Like I know how to put on a performance, so I could fucking make it insane. Just anyhow, I'm open to it. So if I welcome the universe to bring that shit on, because there's been a couple other opportunities where it's like, I'm gonna go do this fucking thing. I was almost on the Real World once, and I was almost on Blind Date. Like I'll fuck around and do this stupid shit and make it good. If I, whatever I'm given, I will make it like as good as I can. But yeah, like it would, even if I would have lost on the raft, it would have been a triumphant loss. Yeah. Like I would have made it like, I would have made it. I mean, I don't want to suck my own dick or anything, but like I would have made it righteous. I would have done something fucking insane,
Yeah.
What it is, I don't know. I'll take a cue from Scott Biben and bite someone's ankle or something, like which he did that in Jerry Springer. I was like, you're biting my ankle. What the fuck? Like that was part of the actual fighting thing. So,
but to me, like, and I don't think you're sucking your own dick, because I have too many examples of you doing the righteous thing, and I know that you would go out in that really wonderful blaze of glory, as it were, because we're all like, I'm familiar with it all. I've kind of I've grown up with you, even though like we didn't know each other. I've grown up with you, so I know you would somehow do that right thing that would hit me in the right spot. Just like when you were on that Jerry Springer thing, and you're going, it's like,
yeah,
Justin does that shit. I know he does that shit.
But I didn't even think that out. Like, and that was like the money shot or whatever, But like we said, like, don't punch in the face, and like fucking Alicia punched us all in the face, and I thought I was like bleeding and shit, and so I just blew the snot and flipped off the crowd because they were pissed. They were like, and whatever. It made a performance, and that's fine. That show is wild because they cut out so much good shit that I really wish was in there. This friend of ours, Rusty Nails, is video director. He was in the audience, and they cut his part out. And he was also performing too, because he was in the audience secretly as a plant from Scott Biben. And he was asking like, what would God think of all this? And I was like, there is no fucking God, and it was like, and it like, we were hamming it up, but like, that's the shit. Like that should have been in the show. Like that would have been the jam. So
my favorite part of that was the amount of homophobia that you drummed up. That's what made it for me, because people were so, there's still like, and the world still does have a lot of homophobia, but I think back then a lot more so. Freak people the fuck out. And to me, I'm just like, if that's really all it takes, America, wait till you find out what the world really is.
Yeah, but what's really bizarre about that is when it aired, it was instantaneous on the streets. People were noticing me. Like, it was fucking crazy. Like, just people would just drive down the street and be like, Jerry. And like, I mean, now it would like happen all the time. Like it fucking, like the mall or the grocery store, like, and just crazy shit on tour in different cities. And even my grandparents and stuff were like, oh my God, you were on the TV show. And the whole time I'm like, you guys all either should like hate me or be mad at me or like want to beat my ass up or whatever. And like, but that the weird, or like, I guess, homoeroticism or whatever, you know, like the gay relationship of the story did not seem to matter to anyone. They were like, you were on TV and that's fucking killer. And it was like, yeah, but what did you see what I did on TV? You should be upset at me. And instead you're like, you're supportive. Like, even if you don't even support, even if you're not even homophobic, I was a fucking dick on that show, you know, like, but everyone's like, that was sick. And you're like, no. So as much as you want to point out the homophobia, and I agree, like, there is that shit, but I was like, where is it? I was ready for
the backlash.
Yeah, I was ready for like something, especially like, you know, living in a fucking neighborhood I lived in, you know, all the cholos and shit are like, what up? You know, you were on Jerry Springer. And I was like, oh, fuck, they're going to beat me up. And they're like, that's sick. You know, and I was like, what? What the fuck? You know, ready to get beat up. I've been called fag way too many times in my life to not expect that, you know?
Right. And there was just like, you cut this pose, like, not a pose, but like this figure. You cut a figure that was to me, very stylish, handsome, but like your haircut was very unlike anything that was going on to people outside of our deal. You know what I mean? Like, it stood out. So of course that was going to be instantly recognizable to the world at large. So they're seeing this and they're not, I guess maybe the blinders go on and they're just like, that dude was a fucking nut on that show. Awesome.
Yeah, I guess it was. I mean, maybe they didn't. Maybe they knew it was fake. You know, I don't know.
We all knew it was fake.
Well, dude, I mean, the people that were on before us were like legit. Like, the one guy had a broken arm and he beat up his wife's new boyfriend with a cast. You know, they were like legit. There was some real shit going on. Most of that stuff you didn't get to see because it's just that clip of us on the. But there was this like, I don't know where the hell they were from. But the weird thing is I was there twice. So I was there in a slightly different story, maybe a year prior to that. And the family that they had on before us was so gnarly and they fucked each other up so bad. They just kept them on the entire show and didn't have anybody else on. So they sent us home. That's how easy it is to get on that fucking show. It's like, I did it twice and didn't even realize it. You know, like the second time they're like, you look familiar. And I was like, don't know what you're talking about. And then, like, you know, they had us go out there, different characters, and like do the thing again.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But so some of it was real. But whatever.
But to me, you infiltrated something that, you know, was sadly important to culture at that time. Like when we were in our like early 20s, that was a big deal. That was a thing.
Yeah.
For the world, to us, it was laughable. And you made it your own. And that's the real, you know, theater of it. That's the real win. You know, that we had our, like, when you had your moment on there, we all did.
Sure.
Because I guess we all felt it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of looked at it like as a little kid watching the Sex Pistols on the Bill Grundy show, and like the kind of like
dirty fucker.
Yeah, like the like audacity of the band. You know, like I was like, oh yeah, like I get it. You know, and also, I mean, they were saying like dress punk and like, you know, whatever the fuck they were trying to tell us to do. So I think subconsciously I was gonna go there regardless. But they were like, you know, so I think I probably channeled some Steve Jones when I went on there just to be like, all right, man, let's just fuck with these people. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it was like a performance in itself, you know, and not till the questions at the end where I couldn't really get into it with someone else. It was like we were all part of the skit, but I wanted to have combat with the audience, you know, and that did happen, but they cut out a lot of the good shit. I ran into the audience at one point to fight this guy and stuff. They cut that out.
I remember,
but that was like the real homophobic shit. He was calling me fag, and I was like, "All right, motherfucker, come on, like I'll show you, fag." And we both like went at each other in the crowd, but they didn't let us. There was no contact, you know. But I mean, anyone would beat me up, I'm sure, but I didn't care. I'm like, what is a few punches? It's gonna be great, you know. It's gonna be great television, and I that's all that mattered, you know. Like I knew like the end game at that point.
And well after, like I was in Hudak and I were in a Denny's in our hometown with Scott, and he told us the in and outs of all the things that we didn't get to see, and it was endlessly entertaining for us. But there's a part of me that really is bummed that I didn't get to see it.
Yeah.
But to me, that is just kind of like par for the course for what the Locust were. You guys were, you were what the Sex Pistols should have been in the 70s, because like they flared up and burned out. The Locust weren't like ultimately fucked up on a million drugs. There was a purpose, and things kept happening, and there was an agenda, and it was political, and it was important, and it was very, very, you could count on it. Like, we're gonna see them again. They're not gonna be fucking dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's heroin for you, what Sid. But that's a really crazy. I never tried to. For one, I appreciate what you just said, but I also don't think I have the guts to like to associate the Sex Pistols lineage with the Locust. But I do.
You don't have to, because I said it.
Okay, well, I don't have to agree with it, but I will say that I will say that there was a lot of subconscious cues taken, because I think for me growing up with the Sex Pistols, yeah, they were political, but they weren't like, they didn't seem like a political band. They seemed like kind of this like fuck you. I mean, aside from Sid Vicious wearing a swastika shirt, they seemed like a pretty righteous fuck you kind of like to society band. And I was like, okay, I get it. And not really knowing until in my 20s when I discovered like a lot of their political cues were from the Situationists, which I was like, oh, that's my jam. Like, it was really about discovering the Situationists, especially for the Locust, and like all the shit that Gabe and I were trying to like gear towards, like these like subversive, weird, fucked up things that had a political undertone to it. And I think that was like a huge thing, but also too coming from struggle, because I realized at an early age, like when you're overtly political, you automatically turn people off. And not that I'm turning off, you know, like you turn off people that are like agree with you. They're just like, I don't want to hear about how all cops are bad, and like I don't want to hear about how we should burn the American flag, or about like how capitalism's fucked, or you know, the fuck, I don't even like the jail system. I don't know, whatever, you know, like military, you know, I get it. I totally get it. And I think it just took a minute. Like, that's why Swing Kids were like kind of like less overtly political. And then it was the Locust was like subversive and weird, and like, is that political, or what the fuck is this?
Yes.
You know, and I got it, you know.
It was political to me. It was political to me. Very
But
much.
the whole time it was political. Even when, like, you know, I would go see Aniak Arrow play, who didn't have a political lyric as far as I could tell, you know, and they're playing Food Not Bombs benefits. So they're playing like at this, you know, benefit for the homeless shelter that was needed to be built down in downtown. Like, and then I was like, okay, yeah, now I do understand what's political. It's kind of like how you spend your dollar. Like, that's the real political thing right there, you know. And I think that's really, really important. You know, you could be this super righteous, you know, no offense to, you know, Zach from Rage, but you could be like Rage, but at the end of the day, like, all your t-shirts are made in a sweatshop. Like, that's kind of not that fucking rad.
Yeah,
I get it. You know, maybe they can't control it, and I don't want to discredit Rage or whatever, but I think that I think there's a different nuance, and I welcome that, because, you know, for the Locust, it was like we were taking cues from stuff like John Waters, where it was very subversively political without being overly political.
Well, but the Locust was also taking cues from AK Press and making sure that it kind of did happen in house in a way, where as much as I love Zach, as much as I love Inside Out and then Rage, yes, they did make t-shirts and sweatshops, and maybe they weren't in charge of it, but we get to be in charge of it because it's a microcosm, right? So we get to pick and choose what blanks our t-shirts get printed on, and we are in control of that, and there's not a publicist in between us or a manager in between us and the end product of our commerce. Our
Sure.
commerce is ours,
Which
and
maybe was why, like, maybe that's why the Sex Pistols, imploded, because of Malcolm McLaren and because of Warner Brothers or A&M or whatever major label they're dealing with. I think that might have been, because then if you look at that lineage too, like John Lydon going to PIL, that first PIL record was so insanely informative, especially to, like, I'm sure to Jay Hudak and, all the homies that were like into like the
all of
weirdo
us.
shit. Yeah.
Our whole crew that I grew up with, me, Jay, Eddie,
Yeah.
that was our shit. And as much as we loved the Pistols, and the Clash was my first concert. I saw the Clash open up for the Who with my dad.
Wow.
And Bo Diddley opened up for the like it was the Shea Stadium show. I was a baby. I was a baby, brother. I was probably like fucking 5, 6.
Wow.
I was a punk since then. And like that, of course that affected me. But like, I met Jay and Eddie and all of them, and we were into PIL, we were into Devo, and we were into things that, like, it didn't have to sound heavy or crazy or like just frenetic for it to be political, prescient, and earth moving. Howard Zinn isn't a heavy-handed anarchist. Howard Zinn, there's nuance, there's a balance to his writing, but the end result is the thrust into where we need to be, right?
Yeah.
Musically the same way.
So maybe we should give Rage some credit, even though I think their fucking music is garbage. I like Zach. I think he's really important. But I think that Rage is like, we can't, I also hate when people are like, will fault you for like really stupid shit. You're just like, not that a sweatshop thing is stupid, but like, whatever. Rage was, it's like you pick your battles, like you fuck up here and there. You can't be, the most punkest ever, always, whatever. Like, I don't know.
We've all sidestepped the punk thing, and Zach certainly has. I have no beef with Rage. I think some of their music is very Led Zeppelin questionable, but what it comes down to really is who was faking the beliefs and who was really invested in it. And the guy who dropped out is the one who really believed it, and who dropped out, Zach.
Yeah.
So I love him for that as well.
But this is a weird philosophical thing too, because I remember, like, with the Sex Pistols growing up, I was always obsessed with Sid because he looked the coolest and he died. And then I kind of realized, like, oh, it's all about John Lydon and PIL.
Yeah.
But now John's been kind of a fuckhead, I think, maybe. And I feel like
Steve Jones is the one. Steve Jones is the one, and I agree.
He is so rad, man. He's so fucking rad. Like, just his goddamn Instagram is hilarious, and I'm like, man, that guy is fucking so sick. I really, really love that guy. And
he's all love. He's all love. And what was the Cutie Steve and his Sex Pistols? Wasn't that the original name or something like that?
I don't know.
Something
I think
to that order.
I think his honesty was really important, because I remember, like, watching Filth and the Fury, and he was like, I just wanted to get my dick sucked. And you're just like, wow, that's kind of crazy that he's just saying that. But he was being honest. He was just like this teenage pervert and, whatever, regular boy. Like, that's cool.
He was sexually molested. He was sexually molested. So, and I, like, all cards on the table, I understand that. So you become overly sexualized by that. So of course he's hunting for,
but he didn't have the look that, like, Sid and Johnny did for me,
right?
And he was like, he was kind of like the regular looking dude, that have that. But now, after time has passed, I'm like, man, he was the jam, man. That guy was so rad.
He's the one. And, like, the thing is, he's the sleeper, and that's the best part about it. Sid, no talent, all style, so larger than life. John Lydon, very magnetic, very hideous. Oh my God. Like, just green teeth, a mess. but he was magnetic, and he knew how to speak, and he knew how to be magnanimous and vicious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no
But it
pun
was like,
intended.
yeah, but then it was him working with like Keith Levine and Martin
Yeah.
Atkins. He picked the people that he associated with after the Pistols very accurately. No, I mean, I don't know if he knew what he was doing, but like the people he chose to work with in those early PIL records just changed the trajectory of so many fucking people's musical ideas, you know, and that I think that's important, for sure.
Just his association alone with, you know, Jaw Wobble going in that direction.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
That is, he's thinking outside the box in a way that most people were not.
Yeah.
And I'm a Clash head. That's my number one. They made amazing music. They had a great pop sensibility. They were very political, but I don't think Cut the Crap has the same impact as the first PIL record.
Yeah.
And arguably like Cut the Crap is the first Joe Strummer solo album. The second one being Earthquake Weather, which is still middling in comparison to the first PIL record.
Wow. Yeah. The first few PIL, right? The first, you know, I mean, I think up to This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get was all awesome. There was so many things going on that was just, it was so informative without anybody even knowing. Maybe, I mean, or whatever. I didn't know, you know, but maybe other people did.
Do you see where all of this puts us at the Locust, though? Like, really talking about, no, I'm serious. I'm not like, you know, being a sycophant, because, you know, you don't remember, but I've run across you enough times that I don't have to like try to impress you, and we have enough friends in common that I don't have to try to impress you. But do you see where this gets us to the Locust? These associations, this sonic palette, and you know what I mean? Like, from Howard Zinn to PIL, it makes sense that the Locust happens.
It makes sense. Yeah. I guess the thing that I'm uneasy about is like, initially I felt like you were saying like there was like a comparison, like we were some kind of like next of kin of PIL, which I don't think we are. I think that PIL.
The fuck you're not. Because here's the thing. Forget punk, but the pantheon of hardcore kids, which is like sadly what we come from, okay, whether you like it or not, our era is the hardcore era, right? And, you know, you're in Struggle, you're in the Swing Kids, which really subverts the hardcore thing. But what really subverts the hardcore thing is the Locust in the best way, because you get the heaviness and you get the metal and you get all of the thrashiness, but you get all of the experimentation too, and all of the you know, the left-brained artsy, you know, Andy Warhol of it, and you get all the just the craziness of it, and the fun of it, and it all gets distilled into this thing that isn't pure id, but it's certainly an intellectual endeavor that is stripped of pretense. And that's what the Locust is to me.
Thank you. I don't know. It's hard to take a compliment like that. Thank you. But I think, yeah, maybe if like PIL stopped after This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get, and maybe if PIL didn't have the major start of Sex Pistol, the Locust might be kind of more in line with it. I don't know. That could be it. But those two things are like two things that I can't. I mean, they're not like perfect equations. You know, it's not like, oh, this is that and that is this.
Right. But to me, they're in line because the lineage is comparable, and there's a tectonic shift in the music that happens thereafter that makes the two things comparable. Because after the Locust, and the Rob Raws and all in that whole era, things change dramatically and become sometimes good, sometimes bad, but things change. Okay, it's not just like Agnostic Front ripoffs and Sick of It All ripoffs anymore. There's a lot more happening in our microcosm because of that, and that's important, and that's real, and that's honest.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, I
know
guess it's kind of like seeing was it The Weeknd that played at the Super Bowl and he like sampled Susan the Banshees? Like that was pretty crazy to hear that. For me, I'm not really a fan of The Weeknd. I totally am not a fan of the NFL, but I was like, I watched that and I was like, oh man, that's so crazy that something, Susie and Budgie and what, all the people that are involved in that, like are at that thing. They're part of that thing now. Like where do you go from there? Like the moon, outer space or whatever. But like if you're in the fucking halftime NFL thing, like that's a big deal. So yeah, I guess it's kind of like that. So the day when Men's Recovery Project is sampled on something for the NFL halftime or Super Bowl halftime, then we'll know that the world has come full fucking circle.
Yeah, when patriotic hymns gets sampled, let's see, because like if you want to really go deep,
yeah.
But yeah, I saw them too, and they hooked the exhaust of the van up to the venue and got us all sick, and it was insane and amazing.
Wait, who did? Men's Recovery or Born Against?
Born Against.
Yeah. Why would they do that?
They did that a bunch of times. You didn't know that?
No, it sounds terrible.
Sam, like McFeeters is an insane person. He's amazing. He's brilliant. But yes, a couple times on the East Coast touring, for very brief periods of time, they hooked a hose from the back of the tour van into the clubs they were playing in to get people a little sick before they played. It happened.
That sounds terrible.
Well, I mean, it's just it wasn't enough to hurt anybody for certain. You know what I mean? It was just,
yeah.
But that's if you really think about it, that's very Sam McFeeters.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like seeing Filth play and they throw a bunch of fucking razor blades out into the pit and you're like, have fun. And you're like, I mean, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, but it still happened.
Yeah.
So I don't have a format really for this show, Justin. I have one question that I always ask though, and you'll forgive me for asking it, but what is it that terrifies you on an existential level?
Well, that's just such a massive question.
But it's what levels us. It's what makes us who we are, our fears, and what terrifies us about reality.
There's times where like I'll kind of look at all of the stuff that I dedicate my time and my life to that have, I guess, in a sense, defined me. And I think, what is the purpose of all of that? Like, what? When I die, or when we die, or when the planet dies, it won't matter. So why do we spend all of this goddamn time, putting out records? Whatever. So yeah, I mean, I do trip out on shit like that. Like, I wonder where our energy goes. I mean, our brains are we only use a very small portion of our brain, and we're so naive as a species. And I think maybe, I don't know. Maybe there is a reason for it. I hope there is, because we do all this stuff with integrity and dignity and passion, and all of those things might not mean a goddamn thing when you think about it in those terms.
I can tell you in all honesty, I've never gotten that answer. And furthermore, I can tell you the reason why you're doing it is because you're reaching idiots like me and creating an echo chamber, because we're not here to suck each other's dicks, but
Yeah,
you, there's a reciprocity of creator appreciator. We're
sure.
trading energy, and
Wow.
that's what's beautiful about us, as we
Mhm.
explained us and expounded upon the virtues of us. That resonance, that reciprocity of energy. That's what it's about. That's what
Well,
it is.
and all that goes back to um, the Wilkes-Barre Fest, like where it
Yeah.
was like there was no stage, there was
Hmm.
just total pandemonium, like everyone going completely apeshit. For
Yep.
what reason? I don't know. Like it didn't matter, and I think
We
there probably wasn't a single person there that did not have the best time.
I got naked in the pit. I
Yeah,
was
it was
naked in the
liberating.
fuck.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was amazing. It was that amazing to me that I just took my clothes off and fucking got crazy. And a bunch of us
yeah.
did do that,
There was a lot of naked stuff happening, and it was
Yeah.
so rad. And like I think I wish I had the knowledge that I do now back then, but it was rad, and I think that was that's an important, very important thing, because there was this insanely crazy exchange of energy. It wasn't just like you went and watched the Clash play at age 5. It was like there
Yeah.
was this thing happening that everybody was experiencing, and
It was
that
intentional.
yeah, and also it's the kind of thing that not everybody gets to. Like you have to be. I don't know if I believe in luck, but you have to whatever luck is. I don't know. Everyone there was lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody was. Um,
I don't believe in luck, but I believe in love. And there was a lot of love
yeah,
in that experience, for sure. Certainly.
yeah,
I'll
because
never
I feel
forget it.
like that event and that like moment in time helped a lot of people. Like with stuff. I don't know, like whatever everybody was going. Who knows?
It carried me to now, right?
Yeah,
And we got to reconnect now.
yeah,
There's something that's cyclical about existence that carries us through and makes it worth it, right? This makes it worth it. Talking to you again makes it very worth it. And you're never going to remember the times we've run into one another, but we have, and it's always a blast. I've always had a blast with you. I always had a blast with Gabe, God rest him. There's just something about this oddball sideways connection to what we all are that I'll always hold dear. I'll be 75 years old and remember you and love Gabe and love Jay Hudak and love Eddie Gita, and this will be my family forever, and it'll always resonate with me, and I'll never forget it, and it will carry me until the day I die. I will imbue it into my children, which I do.
yeah. I mean, that's an interesting thing too, because I do think that our DNA is passed through. Our the next generation. Our experiences are coded in that.
Yeah.
I think that might be like people's concept of past lives and stuff that I don't believe in that, but I think that our ancestors have these coded DNA elements that are transferred into the next generation, and we experience that in ways that we don't even know. That's just my theory.
Genetic memory, absolutely.
Yeah,
Genetic memory. That's why my wife, who's African American, although has not suffered the things that her ancestors did, completely identifies with, and it's real and it's palpable and honest because that's in her DNA,
yeah.
right? Joy
Um,
resonates the same way.
yeah. It's the yin and the yang, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're always told like you can't you don't know what you have until it's taken away, or like suffering until I don't know. That's another fucking existential question that's too massive, but yeah, that it's pretty wild. It's wild to think that like, oh yeah, this like weird punk show in whatever the year was with like Insanity and Naked People have come
Yeah.
to this like massive conversation about like existence as humankind or whatever. I don't know, but either way, that there's that I think that there's footage of that show online, and it is
Yeah.
insane. It is insane to watch and like to see how fucked up and crazy people are. It's so rad. I don't know. I don't think we can ever achieve that again. I don't think that'll happen again.
Maybe not in that form, and maybe not for us, but for the kids coming up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. At least I hope so. But the footage that exists online is Jay Hoodox.
Yeah. There's this part where I remember Jenny Piccolo's playing, and Joey from the Locust gets in there, and he's in his underwear, and he's yelling louder than Jenny Piccolo.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, dude, how are you louder than that band, man? It's so great. You just hear him fucking screaming, woo! And you're like, that's really crazy that you can hear that little guy in his underwear louder than Jenny Piccolo.
There's a moment on that Hot Water Music Live at the Hardback record where Hudak and I are there at the show, which was supposed to be the final Hot Water Music show, and you hear Jay and I screaming louder than Chuck. So these things do happen.
Yeah. But being louder than Chuck in Hot Water is not like being louder than Jenny Piccolo. You know, that
Jenny Piccolo was a cacophony of epic proportions. Like just for people to understand, if you're not familiar with like Jenny Piccolo, Festival of Dead Deer, or any of those bands, there was a quality to that had a sonic capability that was beyond a Lamborghini in the speed department.
Yeah.
There was something in the water for you guys with that stuff. You were just so fucking loud and very self-assured.
I think we were just reckless. I think we were. Yeah. We didn't have the skill set to know that, this is probably not the best idea, but we thought it was.
You made it happen every time.
Yeah.
So what's going on next for you is my question, because like you've always accomplished so much. You've always gone beyond what people would expect and made it happen in an effortless and it always seemed natural for you to, okay, I'm doing this now. What's the next thing?
I don't know. I mean, I still kind of sit in that mindset of like right now, like when we were younger, it was always just like right now. I don't have like a long goal or whatever. Like, I don't know, like whatever presents itself, I go, oh, okay, let's try this, So, I don't know. We'll see what kind of falls in my lap. I mean, I'll just keep trying to like make cool, weird music and that I like, and then scrape by, and then that's cool enough for me. It like helps me avoid that existential question that you proposed.
But is there something in the pipeline right now that we're not aware of? I guess is the better question.
No, I mean, I don't think there's anything like magical and mystical. I wish there was, and also too, like, I never know what's like, even at the time, it's like, I don't know what is cool to report on or to brag about or to mention, like, until retrospect, you're like, oh, that was a fucking big deal. At the time, I was like, oh no, like this just happened. And then you're like, oh, that was fucking cool,
Right. But it seems to me that everything you're doing turns out pretty fucking cool to me,
Yeah, but with that, well, thank you. But like with everything that you end up seeing that's cool, there's like 15 other things that I did that were not cool and didn't go anywhere, So,
right.
I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it is what it is. I don't know. I'm trying to work on things. I'm trying to evolve and not be stagnant and challenge myself somehow and do something cool and just enjoy what I do, enjoy the output, and like try to, fuck with like the injustices of the world and also like try to find love in that process, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we glean love out of that though? Is there something inherent to all of that equals, the completion of love? or is it just kind of like a futile process? That's what really plagues me, because I'm married now, finally, in my late 40s. I found someone and got married. But do you find like not just like someone outside of yourself, but do you find a love within that kind of completes you,
Mhm.
that makes it all worth it? Or is it just that constant struggle for you?
I don't think it's as black and white as you just explained it. I think
Right.
The constant struggle, and then the also like trying to achieve love, are things that exist and don't exist, because I feel like it's like the basic idea of if you're grateful for what you have, then you have more to be grateful for. How the fuck does that go? Something like that, so, and with being grateful, I feel like it goes hand in hand with love and appreciation for the world that you live in, and that's cool. But like at the same time, it's there are those people that kind of just look at it like in this sort of one-dimensional way, where like they don't consider I don't know, people they don't consider others suffering, and I think
Right.
it's hard, to be like blissful and joyous and like want to wish peace on everyone when there's like complete fuckheads out there ruining the planet for a lot of people and other species and the future and future generations. So, it's like, I guess I get through each day and I try to reflect and think like, what are my obstacles, as in like, who are the people that I want to fight against, or and I don't mean fight in the violent way, but like the people that I want to fucking fight against, and then who do I love and appreciate. And I think if you can kind of reflect and take note or stock of that stuff, that might be a good, for me, that's the way I think I process life on a daily basis.
And I agree, and I think that's how I arrived at my wife, to be honest with you, because she she mirrors what we just both spoke about. Her ideals and her values and what her spirit resonates is what you just said, and what I feel. I wouldn't have gotten married otherwise. I got married in my early 40s because I had run across someone who felt that way. But it's not to do with a person so much as finding love in what you do and what you feel and who you are. And I think you summed that up pretty beautifully, actually. Just to arrive at that point where there's no question about intention. It's just resonating with a sense of purpose, right?
Yeah, and I guess where you get your purpose from can be a million different things. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want, I mean, because I think relationships and family building and stuff is important. As in like your own personal unit, but like, and I'm grateful for my partner. Like we both hate the same things, and we also both like find enjoyment out of like really simple things. I think that's fucking cool. But it's also like, for me, not having a much of a family, and like redefining what my family is, and like seeing that it's like people like you, or people like fucking Martine or Sam McFeeders or whoever, like, these are people that are part of a family, whether they like it or not. And I think that that's also an important thing to kind of look at as well. And I don't know, even like running into Jay Hudak, like, the last time I saw him it was rad and weird and like fucking unexpected. And it's like, it's kind of like seeing, a cousin or like, you know, a nephew or whatever, like, you know, I'm not related to that guy, you know, like,
Yeah.
but I am related to him in a weird way, you know, and so that's pretty rad.
He was in my wedding. I'm definitely related to Jay Hudak. We've been friends since we were fucking little kids, but you know, and that's what it is. Like, we're all part of this. It's not even a microcosm, this organism
Yeah.
that thrives so beautifully on a mutual love and respect. And God, I'm so glad you came on tonight. And this is wonderful. And I don't want to drag it out for you. But Justin, you've meant the world to me for so long, and I appreciate you coming on. I won't drag this out any longer, but I love you dearly. I really do.
Oh, thanks, man. I really, really appreciate that. And I have to say, like, I've done a lot of like podcasts and had a lot of conversations with people, but there's something about this conversation that was unique, and I think that says a lot about you and about your creative output and your intellect. I really appreciate that, and I think I don't know, it's nice to be able to share such specific weird history with someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it all started for me, like, kind of diving into a pool after you because you cracked your fucking head, you know.
Yeah, that was definitely a way to start a conversation. That was a fucking crazy night. Yeah.
But I'll let you go. Listen, man,
okay.
The next time you have anything coming up, I would love to have you on again, because there legitimately would not be a me without you. And
thanks, man.
I love you for that.
Thanks. And you've said some of the most insanely massive compliments to me, and I don't know if I agree with you, but I will definitely say thank you, and I will definitely take them and take them with appreciation. But I really I think you're wrong, but thank you. with your perception of me, but I appreciate that.
And I'm not being a sycophant. It's just my experience, and that's all it is. Take it for what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right, brother.
All right, man. Well, you take care. Thank you very much.
Good night, my friend.
All right, good night.
Bye-bye now.
All right, there it is, my friends. My episode with Justin Pearson. Justin, one hell of a guy. A lot of people find him off-putting. I found out from the documentary. I'm not one of those people. Nothing but warm. Nothing but a really great guy. I always thought that of him in all of my dealings with him over the past 20 some odd years. Nothing but love over here. Speaking of love, if you want to show this show some love, you can do one of half a dozen things. Let's see. First and foremost, you can like and subscribe on whatever platform you listen to us on. You can also become a paid member. What do you get for that? Well, you get unedited episodes. You get at least one exclusive subscribers only episode every month. You'll also be eligible to shop in the members only gift shop, and you will get a digital copy of the soundtrack record, which is coming out in the new year. Another thing you can do is go to our social media and share our posts and our stories, because it seems to me that that's really the only way anyone ever gets to hear things anymore, is if it is somehow co-signed by other people on social media. I feel bad having to pander to that, but let's face it. Without you, there is no me. There is no show. My listeners run this thing. And will continue to do it as long as you continue listening. So check it out. This is the last episode of 2022, and I want to thank you all for being here with us. I want to thank you for listening, enjoying, being a part of the conversation. I don't know what you all like to celebrate as far as December holidays are concerned. But listen, whatever it is you're into, be it Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, God, whatever you dig. I hope you dig it with your family and your friends and you enjoy it and do it in a positive way. Make it your own. And put love out there for Christ's sake. So from all of us at 3:33 a.m. Studios, he's been Justin. I've been Peter. You've been beautiful. And this has been the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. Good night, everybody.